The heart monitor screamed at 3:17 a.m., a single endless tone. I was 17 alone in the ICU, my chest burning, as my heart failed while my mother boarded a plane back to California. Back to her new husband, her new family. The life she chose over her dying daughter. My father had been dead for 10 years, buried in a closed casket. I had no one. 10 years later, my phone lit up at midnight. The number belonged to a phone buried with my father's body. His voice, "Daughter, I don't have much time. Have you ever answered a call from a dead man?" The stories on this channel are created solely for entertainment, educational, and storytelling purposes. While some stories are inspired by real situations submitted by viewers via email, most details have been fictionalized, combined, or altered. My name is Jenna Doyle. I'm 27 years old, a financial analyst at a consulting firm in Ohio, and I built every piece of my life with my own two hands. No inheritance, no family money, no safety net, just 6 years of community college and state university, 2 jobs at a time, and a stubborn refusal to let my past define my future. For 10 years, I had taught myself one lesson above all others. The only person you can truly rely on is yourself. When your mother chooses a plane ticket over your dying body, you learn that lesson fast. You stop waiting for rescue. You become your own rescue. I built my life on that foundation. Not bitterness, not self-pity, just a simple, clean truth. I am alone and that is okay, or so I thought. It started with an email. Ohio General Hospital was digitizing old medical records and needed consent for files from 10 years ago. A checkbox, a digital signature, nothing more. But my hand hovered over the mouse for a long time. Those records contain more than test results and treatment plans. They contain the last time I saw my mother. The last time I believed anyone would come for me. I thought I had buried those memories deep enough. I was wrong. I was 7 when my father died. I remember standing in a small church staring at a closed casket because his body was too badly burned to view. I remember my mother crying, though even then something felt performed about her grief. I remember throwing dirt on the box and thinking with a child's desperate logic, Daddy is not in there. Daddy is somewhere else. He has to be. But what I remember most is the night before. My father kneeling beside my bed, hugging me so tight it almost hurt. His voice shaking as he said words I did not understand until 20 years later. No matter what happens tomorrow, remember this. You are the best thing I ever did. Daddy loves you, Jenna. Always. At 7, I thought it was just a bedtime routine. At 27, sitting in my apartment with that hospital email glowing on my screen, I finally asked myself, did he know something was coming? I called Aunt Patty that weekend, my father's sister, the woman who actually raised me after everything fell apart. Over dinner, I mentioned the email, the memories it stirred up. Patty went quiet in a way I had never seen before. Then she said something she had never told me. I never believed that accident, Jenna. Your father was the most careful driver I ever knew. And the way your mother rushed through everything afterward, the funeral, the identification refusing DNA testing, remarrying 6 months later, she shook her head. I never had proof, just a feeling. Your father called me the week before he died. He was scared of something. He said he had found something at work, something big. He was going to tell me what it was, but then... She did not finish. She did not have to. I filed her words away like I filed away everything else. Another loose thread in a life full of them. Another question I did not have the strength to answer. 3 days later, my phone rang at 11:47 p.m. Unknown number. Montana area code. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me reach for it. Something I cannot explain. A pull in my chest. A feeling that this call was different. Daughter. I don't have much time. And when I heard that trembling voice on the other end, when he spoke my name like a prayer, and a confession and an apology all at once, I understood why. Because dead men do not make phone calls unless they were never dead at all. I did not hang up. Something in his voice held me there. A quality I could not name. A trembling uncertainty that felt too raw to be a lie. So I listened. The man on the other end of the line told me his name was Marcus Webb. He lived in a small town in Montana, worked as a handyman, kept to himself. 20 years ago, he woke up in a hospital with no memory, no name, no past, no idea how he got there or who he was. Doctors told him he had severe head trauma, probably from a car accident. He was found on the side of a road during a snowstorm, half frozen, barely alive. No identification, no wallet, nothing. For 2 decades, he rebuilt his life from nothing. He got a job, found a place to live, existed. But 3 years ago, doctors found a tumor in his brain, and as it grew strange, things started happening. Dreams. Vivid, recurring dreams about a little girl with brown hair, a child's voice calling daddy, a woman's face but twisted somehow wrong in a way he could not explain, a feeling of danger, of betrayal, of something important he needed to do but could not remember. Then the names started coming. Fragments at first. Jenna, then Doyle. Then one morning he woke up having written a full name on a notepad he did not remember touching. Jenna Doyle. He searched online, found news articles about a fraud investigation at a company called Pinnacle Health Insurance, found a mention of the late Thomas Doyle, whose daughter Jenna, found my LinkedIn profile. He tried to message me there, but I never saw it. Finally, he asked a social worker to help him find my phone number through public records. His voice cracked when he said the next part. I do not know if I am really your father. I do not remember being Thomas Doyle, but I feel like you are someone I lost, someone important. I had to find you before it was too late. I asked him what he meant by too late. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said the word that changed everything. The tumor, 6 months, maybe less. I am dying, Jenna. I just needed to try. I did not sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad and wrote down everything he told me. Then I started making calls. Aunt Patty knew someone who knew someone at the county archives. Within 3 days, I had the original police report from my father's accident. 20 years old, yellowed paper, faded ink. The report was straightforward: single vehicle accident, snowy night. Car left the road, rolled into a ravine, caught fire. 1 fatality. Body burned beyond recognition. Identified by vehicle registration and a wedding ring found at the scene. Case closed. I read it twice. Standard accident report. Nothing unusual. Then I reached paragraph 7. 1 sentence, almost a footnote buried in procedural language. An unidentified male was found approximately 20 meters from the vehicle. Unconscious, severe head trauma. No identification. Subject transported to St. Mary's Hospital in Jefferson County as John Doe. Status unknown. I read it again and again. Jefferson County. That was a different county from where the accident happened. A different hospital system entirely. An unidentified man, found at the scene of my father's accident, transported to a completely different hospital, and nobody ever followed up. The case was closed in 72 hours. 1 body in the car, 1 name on the registration, 1 grieving widow who identified the wedding ring. But there were 2 men at that scene. 2. And only 1 was accounted for. I called Aunt Patty that night. Did the police ever mention another person at the accident, I asked. Another man found nearby. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said no, never, not once in 20 years. The next morning, I requested my own medical records from the hospital, where I nearly died at 17. Under patient rights laws, I was entitled to any correspondence that included me as the subject. The hospital sent a file. Inside were emails. Most were routine, scheduling, insurance approvals, treatment updates. But 1 email stopped my heart. It was dated 3 days before my mother arrived at the hospital. 3 days before she flew in from California and stood at my bedside and told me she had decided on the cheaper treatment option. The email was from Margaret Caldwell to Richard Caldwell, her husband, my stepfather, the man she left my father for. It read, I have already made my decision. I am not paying for the expensive treatment. The cheaper one will have to do. Honestly, I do not even know why I am going. Patty can handle it. Jenna has always been more her daughter than mine anyway. I will be home by Friday. I read it 3 times. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. She decided to abandon me 3 days before she even saw me. 3 days before she knew how sick I really was. It was not a reaction to stress. It was not a difficult decision made in the heat of the moment. It was planned, calculated. She chose the cheaper option that gave me a 32% chance of dying before she even got on the plane. The next day, my phone rang again. Different number, an elderly woman's voice. Calm, measured, but with an edge underneath. Miss Doyle. My name is Eleanor Marsh. I understand you have been asking questions about your father's accident. My guard went up immediately. Who is this? How did you get my number? I was Richard Caldwell's executive assistant for 15 years, she said. I managed his calendar, his emails, his documents. I know things about that man that would destroy him. And I know why my husband died. She told me her story. Her husband Robert was 62 when he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Treatable, the doctors said if they acted quickly. But Pinnacle Health Insurance denied coverage. Pre-existing condition they claimed, which was a lie. Robert died 4 months later. After that, Eleanor started keeping copies of emails, internal communications, Richard's directives to deny claims for certain demographic, instructions to flag patients who were unlikely to sue. Elderly patients, isolated patients, patients without family advocates. I have 15 years of evidence, Miss Doyle, and I have been waiting for someone brave enough to use it. I asked her why she did not come forward herself. Because Richard would have destroyed me, she said. He has lawyers, money, power. I was a widow with nothing. Who would believe me? She paused. But you are different. You are Thomas Doyle's daughter, and I think you might be the one person who can bring him down. That night, I spread everything on my kitchen table. The police report, the hospital records, my notes from Marcus Webb, Eleanor's information. And slowly, piece by piece, the pictures started to form. My father discovered fraud at Pinnacle Health. He was collecting evidence. He was going to report it. And then he died in a car accident. Except there was another man at the scene. A John Doe, transported to a different hospital, never identified, never followed up on. A man who woke up with no memory, who has been living as Marcus Webb in Montana for 20 years, who suddenly remembers the name Jenna Doyle. What if they got it wrong? What if the body in that casket was not my father? What if it was someone else, a stranger, a passerby, someone who happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time? What if my father has been alive all this time, not knowing who he was, not knowing I existed? And what if the man who married my mother, the man who built his empire on dead patients and denied claims, what if he was the one who made sure my father could never tell anyone what he knew? I flew to Montana 3 days later. I packed a small bag, took time off work, and told Aunt Patty where I was going. She wanted to come with me, but I needed to do this alone. I needed to look into this man's face and see for myself whether 20 years of grief had been built on a lie. The town was small, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and strangers stand out. Marcus Webb lived in a modest apartment above a hardware store on Main Street. I stood outside for 10 minutes before I found the courage to climb the stairs. When he opened the door, my breath caught in my throat. He was older than the photographs Aunt Patty had given me. Of course he was, 20 years older. Gray hair, where there had been brown. A weathered face lined by time and illness, and a life lived without memory. He was thin, fragile, in a way that made my chest ache. But his eyes, the shape of his jaw, a small scar on his chin that Aunt Patty once told me came from a fall when he was a boy. I knew. Before any test, before any proof, I knew. I showed him a photograph I had brought. Thomas Doyle, age 35, holding a 7-year-old girl on his shoulders, both of them laughing. Me. That little girl was me. Marcus stared at it for a long time. His hands trembled. "That is me," he whispered. "Is it not?" I could not speak. I just nodded. I swabbed his cheek with a DNA kit I had ordered online, sent the sample to a lab that promised results in 72 hours. 3 days of waiting, 3 days of hoping and dreading in equal measure. When the email arrived, I was sitting in a diner in town drinking coffee I did not taste. I opened it with shaking hands. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. Marcus Webb was Thomas Doyle. My father was alive. The next question was obvious. If my father survived the accident, then who was buried in his grave? I hired a private investigator who specialized in cold cases. He searched missing persons records, shelter logs, homeless databases from 2005. Within a week, he found a pattern. Christopher Hayes, age 50, was a regular at St. Vincent's Shelter in the county where the accident occurred. He had no family, no permanent address, no one who would miss him. He signed the shelter log on December 13th, 2005. He never signed again. The investigator pieced together what must have happened that night. Christopher was walking the road, probably looking for a place to sleep or scavenging for discarded items along the highway. He saw the burning car in the ravine. Most people would have kept walking. Most people would have told themselves it was not their problem. Christopher climbed down. He pulled my father out of the burning wreck. He saved his life. Then Christopher went back, maybe to search for valuables, maybe just curious. Maybe he thought there was someone else inside. The fuel tank exploded. Christopher Hayes died instantly. My father, unconscious and badly burned, was thrown clear by the blast. His wedding ring, loosened by the heat, flew off somewhere in the snow. When police arrived, they found one burning car registered to Thomas Doyle, one burned body inside, one wedding ring on the ground nearby, and one unconscious man 20 meters away with no identification. They made assumptions. The body in the car must be the owner. The man in the snow must be a passerby who tried to help. My mother arrived the next day. She identified the wedding ring. She did not request DNA testing. She did not ask questions. Case closed in 72 hours. Christopher Hayes was buried under my father's name. My father was sent to a hospital in a different county as John Doe. For 20 years, a hero lay in a stranger's grave. And my father lived a stranger's life, not knowing who he was, not knowing I existed, not knowing that the woman he married had moved on before his casket was even in the ground. The memories came back slowly at first, then in floods. The tumor in my father's brain, the same one that was killing him, was also breaking down the psychological barriers that had locked away his past. Dissociative amnesia, the doctors called it. His mind had blocked the trauma of that night so completely that he forgot everything. But now, piece by piece, it was returning. He remembered discovering the fraud at Pinnacle Health Insurance, patterns in the data that did not make sense, claims denied systematically always targeting the same demographics: elderly patients, women living alone, people without family advocates, people who were unlikely to fight back or sue. He remembered collecting evidence, USB drives hidden in his desk, printed reports locked in a safe deposit box. He was preparing to contact the FBI. He remembered a meeting with Richard Caldwell late one night. Richard's office, Richard's cold smile, Richard's voice saying words my father never forgot even when he forgot everything else. "You are making a mistake, Thomas. A very serious mistake." He remembered discovering my mother's affair, finding texts on her phone, realizing that his wife and his boss had been together for months, maybe years. He remembered the night of December 14th, driving home on snowy roads, headlights behind him too close. A truck ramming his car from behind, forcing him off the road. Falling, fire, pain, and then nothing. 20 years of nothing. He broke down when he told me. His voice cracked, and his hands shook and tears ran down his face. "He tried to kill me, Jenna. Richard tried to kill me." And Margaret knew. She had to have known. But my father did not let himself be only a victim. "There is something else you need to know," he said. "Something I have been carrying for 20 years, even when I did not remember what it was." He looked at me with shame in his eyes. "I discovered the fraud a year before I was going to report it. A full year. I knew people were dying, elderly patients being denied treatment they needed. And I stayed silent. I was scared of losing my job, my income, my comfortable life. I told myself I needed more evidence. I told myself I was being careful. But the truth is, I was a coward. 6 months. That is how long I investigated while doing nothing. In that time, at least 12 more patients died. People who might have lived if I had spoken up sooner. He met my eyes. I am not a hero, Jenna. I am a coward who eventually did the right thing too late. The accident losing you, these 20 years of emptiness. Sometimes I think it was karma. Punishment for my silence. I did not know what to say. I am not asking for your forgiveness," he continued. "I am asking you to understand that the truth is complicated. I was a victim, yes, but I was also complicit in other people's suffering. Do not make me into something I am not." We sat together in silence for a long time after that. There were no movie moment embraces, no tears of perfect reconciliation. 20 years is too long. We were strangers who shared DNA, but eventually my father reached out and took my hand. "I do not remember being your father," he said. "I do not remember your first steps or your first words or putting you to bed at night. But I remember the feeling. this warmth in my chest that I could not explain. For 20 years, I felt like someone was missing, like there was a hole where something important used to be. He squeezed my hand. That was you, Jenna. It was always you. I looked at this man, this stranger who was my father, and I understood something. Richard Caldwell thought he had gotten away with murder. He was living in a mansion in California, playing golf, on weekends sleeping soundly at night. He thought the truth was buried forever. He was wrong. I did not seek revenge. I sought justice. There is a difference. Revenge is personal. Revenge is emotional. Justice is systematic. Justice is patient. I am a financial analyst. I understand systems. I understand how to build a case with evidence, how to let the facts speak louder than feelings. So that is what I did. I contacted a whistleblower attorney who specialized in healthcare fraud. I reached out to an FBI agent in the healthcare fraud division, whose name Eleanor had given me. I connected with an investigative journalist at a major newspaper who had been writing about insurance company abuses for years. I gave them everything: the DNA results, Eleanor's 15 years of emails, the police report with the John Doe footnote, the reconstructed timeline, my father's returning memories. I refused all interviews. I did not want to be the face of this story. The victims' families should tell their stories. The elderly patients who died because Richard Caldwell decided their lives were not worth the cost. I was just opening the door. But Richard Caldwell had expensive lawyers, and they had a strategy. Within days, his legal team launched a counterattack that nearly destroyed everything. Thomas Doyle has been legally dead for 20 years, they argued in press statements and legal filings. He suffered severe brain trauma and cannot remember his own name. His so-called memories are unreliable at best, fabricated at worst. This is a case of a mentally unstable man being manipulated by a daughter, seeking inheritance and attention. The FBI agent called me with bad news. "We have a problem," she said. "Without corroborating evidence beyond your father's testimony, the case is weak. His dissociative amnesia makes him vulnerable on cross-examination. Any halfway decent defense attorney will tear him apart on the stand. We need more." Then the worst happened. I got a call from Montana. My father had collapsed at home. Seizure. The tumor was growing faster than expected. Emergency surgery. He might not survive the week. I flew back to Montana and sat beside his hospital bed, watching machines breathe for him, watching monitors track his fading heartbeat. He looked so fragile, so small. This man I had just found after 20 years of thinking he was dead. I held his hand the way Aunt Patty once held mine all those years ago when I was 17 and dying and alone. I had just found him, I thought. After 20 years, I finally found him. And now, I might lose him again. The fluorescent lights hummed above me. The sterile smell of disinfectant filled my nose. The same loneliness I felt at 17 came flooding back, history repeating itself in the cruelest possible way. At 3 in the morning, I sat alone in the hospital hallway and called Eleanor. "I do not know if I can do this," I told her. "They are going to destroy my father on the stand if he even survives. His memories are fragmented. The lawyers will say he is delusional. Richard is going to win. He is going to get away with everything." Eleanor's voice was calm, firm. "Then we do not rely on your father's memory," she said. "We find someone else who was there. Someone who can corroborate." "Who?" I asked. "The truck driver," she said. "The one Richard hired to run your father off the road. I have been tracking him for years. His name is Harold Bennett. He is 73 years old, and he is dying of lung cancer in a hospice in Pennsylvania. He does not have long." "How do you know he was involved?" I asked. "Because 15 years ago I overheard Richard on the phone," she said. "He was nervous, more nervous than I had ever seen him. He said Bennett better keep his mouth shut or I will make sure he joins Doyle." I wrote it down. I never forgot. I flew to Pennsylvania with the FBI agent. Harold Bennett was 73, skeletal, breathing through an oxygen tank. He had days left, maybe hours. When we explained why we were there, he started to cry. "I have been waiting for this," he said. 20 years I have carried it. I want to die clean." His confession was recorded on video. "A man paid me $50,000 to run a car off Route 47 on the night of December 14th, 2005. He gave me the license plate number. Said it was just supposed to scare the guy, make him have an accident, nothing fatal. I did not know the car would roll. I did not know it would burn. I never knew the man's name who hired me. Not for sure. He used a go-between, but I kept insurance, a photograph I took of him when he handed me the money, just in case. Harold reached under his pillow and produced a faded photograph. The man in the photograph was Richard Caldwell. With Harold's confession and photograph, everything changed. The FBI now had Harold Bennett's deathbed confession on video, a photograph of Richard Caldwell paying the man who caused the accident. Eleanor's 15 years of internal emails documenting fraud. Statistical analysis showing systematic denial patterns, targeting elderly and isolated patients. DNA proving Thomas Doyle survived. A complete timeline reconstruction proving the accident was staged. Richard's lawyers tried to negotiate. The FBI refused. Richard Caldwell was arrested at his country club, mid-golf swing. Handcuffs, cameras, his face on every news channel in the country. The charges were devastating. Healthcare fraud over 120 counts of wrongful death. Conspiracy to commit murder. Attempted murder. Obstruction of justice. Because the charges included federal crimes and murder for hire, bail was denied. Richard Caldwell would await trial in federal custody. He would not see the outside of a prison cell for the rest of his life. My father survived the surgery. Barely. The doctors removed most of the tumor, but not all. The prognosis was uncertain. Could be 2 years, they said. Could be 10. The brain is unpredictable. He woke up 3 days after the surgery. I was there holding his hand. Did we get him? He whispered. We got him. Dad, I said. He is in federal custody. No bail. My father closed his eyes. A tear ran down his cheek. Then it was worth it, he said. All of it. Even the 20 years. My mother was not criminally charged. The evidence against her was circumstantial. She knew Richard was dangerous. She benefited from my father's death. But there was no proof she knew the specific plan. Still, her life collapsed anyway. Richard, facing life in prison, began implicating her to reduce his sentence. She knew something would happen to Thomas, he told investigators. She encouraged it. Ask her about the emails. They found an email my mother sent 3 days before my father's accident. Just make it look like an accident. I do not want to know the details. It was not enough for criminal charges. Too vague, too deniable. But it was enough for everyone to know. Richard's adult children publicly disowned both of them. Assets were frozen. The California mansion was seized. Friends disappeared. My mother was forced into a small apartment working retail. At 52, she tried to contact me once. A letter. I know you hate me, she wrote. I deserve it. But I want you to understand. I was scared. Richard was powerful. I did not have choices. I did what I had to do to survive. Maybe someday you will understand. I wrote back one sentence. You had a choice. You made it. So did I. I did not send it. I burned it instead. People always say you need to forgive to move on. That holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I used to believe that. I spent years trying to forgive my mother. Not for her sake, but for mine. But here is what I have learned. Forgiveness is not a requirement for healing. I do not forgive my mother. I do not think I ever will. She knew something was going to happen to my father, and she let it. She married the man who tried to kill him. She looked at me, her own daughter dying in a hospital bed, and chose to walk away. That is not something I can forgive, and I have stopped trying. But I do not hate her either. Hatred would mean she still has power over me. It would mean I am still the 17-year-old girl crying in an empty hospital room, wondering why her mother did not love her enough to stay. I am not that girl anymore. I do not forgive my mother, but I have stopped letting her define me. That is not forgiveness. It is something better. It is freedom. Justice was served. The bad guys lost. The truth came out. But here is what nobody tells you about justice. It does not erase 20 years. It does not give back the childhood I lost. It does not make my father remember pushing me on the swings. Justice is not healing. Justice is just the end of the lie. Now comes the hard part, figuring out what comes next. The trial lasted 4 months. 4 months of testimony, evidence, and the slow unraveling of a man who thought he was untouchable. Richard Caldwell was convicted on all counts. 124 counts of healthcare fraud resulting in death. 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder. 1 count of attempted murder. Multiple counts of obstruction of justice. The sentence was life in federal prison without possibility of parole. At 57 years old, Richard Caldwell will die behind bars. The judge's words made national news. Mr. Caldwell, you systematically exploited the most vulnerable members of our society, the elderly, the sick, those without advocates. You treated human lives as line items on a balance sheet. You attempted to murder a man who tried to expose your crimes. May God have mercy on your soul, because this court will not. 127 families received settlements from Pinnacle Health Insurance's bankruptcy. Eleanor Marsh testified at the trial. She was 72 years old, and she had waited 15 years for that moment. Her voice never wavered. My husband did not die in vain, she told reporters afterward. None of them did. My mother was never criminally charged. The evidence against her was circumstantial. That email she sent just make it look like an accident was damning, but not conclusive. Too vague for prosecution. But punishment comes in many forms. She lives alone now in a studio apartment in a city where she knows no one. Works part-time at a department store. Has no friends, no family, no one who calls. Richard's adult children blame her as much as they blame him. They refuse all contact. The California mansion was seized. The bank accounts were frozen. The life she built on my father's supposed grave crumbled to dust. She tried to reach me twice more. Different phone numbers, another letter, when she showed up at my workplace. I had security escort her out. After that, she stopped trying. I do not know if she finally understood or just gave up. I do not care anymore. Some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt, and some should not be. A court order officially voided my father's death certificate. For the first time in 20 years, Thomas Doyle exists in the eyes of the law. He has a driver's license, a social security number, a name. His tumor surgery was partially successful. Doctors removed 80% of it. The remaining 20% is inoperable but slow-growing. Could be 5 years, could be 15. More time than I expected, he told me. More than I deserve. He moved to Ohio, a small apartment 20 minutes from mine. We have dinner every Sunday now, sometimes with Aunt Patty, sometimes just the two of us. We are learning to be father and daughter again. Not the father and daughter we might have been. That is gone forever. But something new, something built from what remains. One Sunday over pasta, he asked me a question. Do you ever wish things had been different, that I had been there for everything I thought about it before answering? Of course, I said. I wish you had been there for my first day of high school, graduation, my first job, all of it. He looked down at his plate. His eyes were wet. But I continued the person I am today. Independent, strong, able to stand on my own. I became that person because I had to, because no one was coming to save me, because I learned to save myself. That sounds lonely, he said. It was, I admitted, but it also made me who I am, and I like who I am. He reached across the table and took my hand. I like who you are too, he said. I just wish I could take credit for it. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. You can take credit for the stubbornness, I told him. Aunt Patty always said I got that from you. We finished dinner, watched an old movie. He fell asleep on my couch, snoring softly. I covered him with a blanket and thought about what family really means. Not the people who share your blood. Not the people who were supposed to love you, but did not. Family is the people who show up. The people who stay. The people who choose you. I arranged to have Thomas Doyle's grave exhumed. DNA testing confirmed the body was not my father. Dental records from a free clinic for homeless patients provided a match. Christopher Hayes, 50 years old when he died. No family, no friends. No one who noticed when he disappeared, but now he has a name. And a proper burial. I paid for a new headstone in a small cemetery in Ohio. It reads Christopher Hayes, 1955 to 2005. A stranger who chose to save a life. A hero remembered at last. I stood at the grave with my father. The man who is only alive because Christopher made a choice that night. He did not know you, I said. He had nothing to gain. But he climbed into that ravine and pulled you out. My father placed flowers on the grave. I wish I could thank him, he said. I wish I could tell him that because of him, I got to see my daughter again. Maybe that is what we do, I said. We live the best lives we can. That is how we thank him. My father turned to look at me. You know, Jenna, he said softly, I spent 20 years not knowing who I was. No memories, no name, no past. But somehow the feeling of loving you never went away. I did not know your name. I did not know your face. but I felt you every single day, like a warmth I could not explain. I could not speak. I just took his hand. If you are listening to this, maybe you are wondering what I learned, what wisdom I can offer after 20 years of loss and lies. Here is what I know. The truth does not heal you, it frees you. There is a difference. My wounds are still there. But now I understand them. Now I know they were not my fault. Forgiveness is not required. You can release your anger without excusing what was done to you. You can move forward without pardoning the people who hurt you. Anyone who tells you otherwise is trying to make themselves feel better, not you. Family is a choice. The people who share your blood can betray you in the deepest ways. The people you have never met can save your life. Home is not where you come from. It is where you choose to go. And finally, you are not alone, even when it feels like you are. Even when the hospital room is empty and no one comes, somewhere someone is thinking of you. For 20 years, a man with no memories dreamed of a little girl whose name he could not remember. He did not know who she was. He did not know who he was, but he felt her every single day. That is what I want you to take from this. You are loved, even when you cannot feel it. You are never as alone as you think. I was 7 when I lost my father. I am 27 now. My mother chose a monster over her own child. A homeless stranger chose to save a man he had never met. Family is not about blood. It is about choices. My mother made hers. Christopher Hayes made his. And I have made mine. The truth did not give me back my childhood, but it gave me back my father. It gave me back myself. And that is enough. That is more than enough. Thank you for staying with me through Jenna's story. This journey reminds us of something we often forget in our daily lives. The people who are supposed to love us do not always choose us. But that does not mean we are unworthy of love. Sometimes the greatest betrayals come from those closest to us, and sometimes the greatest kindness comes from complete strangers. Jenna taught us that forgiveness is not a requirement for healing. You can let go of anger without excusing the people who hurt you. You can move forward without pretending the pain never happened. She also showed us that family is not defined by blood. Family is defined by choice, by who shows up, by who stays. If you are going through something similar, if someone in your life has abandoned you or betrayed your trust, please remember this. Their choices say everything about them and nothing about your worth. You deserve love. You deserve loyalty. You deserve people who choose you every single day. And if you have not found those people yet, keep going. They are out there. I would love to hear your thoughts on this story. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted? How did you find the strength to move forward? Please share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who is struggling right now. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next video. Thank you for listening. Until next time, take care of yourself.